Hello friends, it's been a while since I've done a video. Things have been rather crazy around here with this little sweet angel and her big brother, and so getting used to life with two active little ones has been a little bit different. But today I wanted to talk to y'all about Genesis 42, 43, and 44. Joseph he's about 30 years old. So it's been about 20 years since he's seen his brother, since they sold him into slavery. And now he is basically the stand-in for Pharaoh. He is second in command in Egypt. He is the man, which as a Hebrew, being given that kind of power in Egypt was only the Lord's doing. He had been forgotten by the cupbearer and the bread maker, I think it was. And gosh, he was remembered at the right time, for the right purpose, at the right place, in front of the right person, for God to get the most glory out of Joseph in his life and to accomplish what he had planned. I can't imagine as a person what's playing in Joseph's mind, because think about it, like he is probably recounting all of the amazing things. He's seeing hindsight 2020, all of the amazing things that God has done through his imprisonment, through being forgotten by the cupbearer, through all of this, that he being falsely accused by Potiphar's wife, like all of this that he's gone through. He is now seeing God move in a mighty way. Like, think about in your own life the times where God has provided or done exactly what he had put on your heart, or done even more miraculously than you could have ever thought or imagined. Like, I'm sure Joseph never thought he was going to be second in command over all of Egypt, and that was what the dream was about, but he is. And it's crazy that now he is sitting there thinking like, wow, okay, that was God's hand in that. That was God's hand in that. That was God's hand in that. And even looking at this little one right here, she's a testimony to that same thing, being told by a doctor, you better be glad you have one kid because you probably won't ever have another one. And here she is, like a work of God, and looking back at God's hand and his timing, and doctor's appointments and medication and symptoms and more doctor's appointments. And it's just crazy to look back on his faithfulness through all of those things, and not knowing at the time that in all of it, God was working it out. It was all his plan, and the timing of it was perfect. Like, if the cupbearer would have remembered Joseph the first time, then the timing wouldn't have been there. Joseph probably would have been, I don't know, taken out by Pharaoh or something, because it wouldn't have been the time for Pharaoh to have the dream. Like, who knows what would have happened, but because it's God's perfect time, all of this is coming to pass. We talk about rushing God's timing a lot, and how that's not fruitful for what God is going to work, how God is going to work all the things out. And this is just another biblical example of that. Like, God's timing is everything. And when we try to rush that, if Joseph would have, tried to push it and say, like, the cupbearer forgot me, like, I did this, and tried to, whatever, make a name for himself before it was his time, then none of this would have likely have taken place, or it would have been a much more dangerous and long, winding road for before that would have happened. But because God exalted him at the time when Joseph was going to give the glory to God the most, all of this is happening in his perfect time, which should teach us to wait on the Lord. Wait on the Lord, and know that if you're in the prison or the palace, he is with you when you belong to him. So then Joseph's going to send them back, and he keeps one of the brothers back. I think Simeon, is how you say his name, but he keeps one of the brothers back so that they will come back. And they go back to Israel, and they say, we have to bring back Benjamin, which is the youngest brother, which is Joseph's biological brother, not his half brother, his real brother. And so he's like, we've got to bring him back for us to be able to get more food, or whatever it is. And so Israel's like, no, that's not going to happen. Well, obviously some time passed before Israel finally says, yes, okay, take him back to Judah, because it says, they say in, I think it's chapter 43, they say, we could have gone and come back 2 times by now. So obviously a lot of times passed since they come back to Israel's house after visiting Egypt the first time. And then now they're about to head back to get more food, because the famine is still going on in the land. And I'm not sure how long this journey to Egypt would have taken, but I would have assumed it would have been a pretty long haul. So Israel is probably seeing that they're right and they have to have more food and all of this, and so he agrees. He agrees to let Judah be the one who is solely responsible for bringing Benjamin back. Like, he says, okay, Judah, like, yes, y'all go, but make sure you bring Benjamin back, because that is like my pride and soul. Like, Joseph's already gone. Benjamin's got to come back, you know. Sorry, I'm moving my phone around so much. My fingers hurting. Dustin took my tripod to try to see if Pierce could get him a turkey, and I still haven't gotten it back. So they come back with Benjamin. And the first thing that they do is apologize for having the money in their sacks, because they know that they paid for it the last time and it wound up there, and they were like freaking out about that. And so they apologize and all this kind of stuff. Well, little do they know, Joseph is making this whole like dinner for them. So he gets his people to make this big dinner for him, and he actually has to leave when he sees Benjamin and go, and he weeps. Like, I can only picture hysterically, because he's now seen his full-on biological brother, who I'm sure he missed, and all of this is just probably overwhelming to him, how God has worked all of this out. And now they're back, and it's just crazy to think like how overwhelming those feelings would have been, you know, like how crazy it would have been to see God's plan really taking place like this. And so he's sitting there, and he goes and weeps, and he comes back to eat with them, and they're sitting around the table, and he sends them off with more food. But before he sends them off completely, he asks one of his people to put a silver cup in Benjamin's sack. So he does. Well, then the person is sent by Joseph to go and look in all their sacks and accuse them of taking the silver cup, which is so interesting to me. Like, I actually had to look up, why would this be a thing? Like, why would Joseph have done this and not revealed himself to them at that point? Or like, why? What was the purpose in it? And something that I saw really got my attention. There's a bunch of different theories on why he did this, but something that I saw really got my attention, and it was the fact that Judah stepped in to try to take Benjamin's place. Judah stepped in to try to take Benjamin's place. So if you remember, Judah's the one who spoke up and actually saved Joseph from being killed by his brothers and said, why don't we just sell him? And then Judah goes through this, we go through this horrible story of what happens to him and his sons dying and all of that. And now Judah is stepping in to take Benjamin's place in all of this and saying, no, send Benjamin back and let me serve you. You know, like, don't take him. And I talked about this when Judah stepped in for Joseph. But again, it just reminds me of a story in the New Testament of a Savior, the Lion of Judah, coming in and taking our place. And I know that this is a human that is tainted with sin, that is stepping in and doing this on behalf of his brother, probably because he's both scared of his dad and he knows what's going to happen, because no telling what the grieving process looked like with Israel when Joseph, you know, that when he thought Joseph had passed. So he's like, we're not going through this again. Like, we won't be able to face him. Our father's not going to make it if this happens. So I'll step in his place. And I love that it's Judah. I love that it's Judah, because I don't believe God is ever not intentional with things like this. And it's a God wink towards what's to come. The Lion of Judah stepping in and taking our place. And no, like, none of them deserve to have to pay for the cup, because they really didn't put the cup in there. They didn't steal the cup. Joseph put the cup in there. It was planted. But they all had a part in Joseph's being sold. They were all guilty of that. And you know, we all bear the guilt and the shame until Jesus steps in and takes our place. It's just really beautiful how that symmetry from the Judah stepping in, I don't know. I was wondering if any of y'all saw that as well. But in all of this, the main part of all of this story is God is going to work out what he's going to work out. And it may not be through the means that you think it's going to happen. Joseph had this dream that God was going to do this, that his brothers were going to bow down to him, and I'll be willing to bet he never thought it was going to work out this way. He never said, that dream means I'm going to be second in command in Egypt, and there's going to be this drought, and I'm going to have saved up all this food, and they're going to have to come to me, and that's how it's going to work out. And oh, by the way, I'm going to have to be in prison. I'm going to be falsely accused. I'm going to be forgotten. I'm going to be neglected, all before this takes place. Isn't that crazy? Yet here he is. God is so faithful. God is so faithful to do what he says he's going to do for his children, and for those that he has called, and for those that he has purposed to take care of his people, the people that he loves. So cool. And we're going to see the most beautiful part of the story tomorrow in chapter 45. I love you guys, and I will see you next time.